Computer. Hello. This is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil Podcast. The End Evil Podcast is dedicated to teaching and learning about natural law and the importance of freedom and care, true care. This podcast is based loosely on the book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. I really like Jeremy Locke's quote, which is, "Evil is the destruction of freedom." And I think understanding this concept about evil in the world and working towards freedom will help all of humanity work towards a better world in the future. And that's why we do this. And I am always proud and glad to communicate with other content creators and folks that are working on a similar project that I am, of trying to work towards natural law, being more in alignment with the principles that define our reality. And I've met this gentleman here, Francesco Sani, who's here with me today to talk about the movie Dune. Thanks, Francesco, for setting aside this time for me. Appreciate it.
Well, absolutely, man. Thank you for inviting me. It's I'm really glad to be here talking about Dune, which is one of my favorite works of science fiction. So,
yeah,
thanks.
You were showing me those. You have the all the books in big, thick versions with all the books put together, and I could tell you've done a good job of reading all those and thinking about them. And I really enjoyed your conversation with Sean McCann about Dune, and that was probably right about the time when the new version was coming out, correct?
Yes, I think it was sometime before it came out, a few months before it came out, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I have I reread the first one for that occasion, but it's been quite a few years, probably 15 years or so that I've read all the others, which are six books. So yeah,
it's been a minute too since I went through those, and like we were talking about before the show, there's one I still have to read, which is Chapter House. But what were we
last one of the series?
The last one, yeah. So that maybe having this conversation will spur me to crack that book open and read it, because I've loved Frank Herbert's works, and the Dune series has stuck with me. I would say almost more than any other sci-fi. I did some other episodes with Aliens. That's one of my favorite all-time sci-fi movies. We were talking.
Yeah,
about
mine too, by the way. And yeah,
my
compliments for that episode. That was really interesting. So
thank you.
I enjoyed it quite a bit.
And it's funny, the more Brandon and I talked about it, the more allegory, metaphor, and deeper levels I was able to see, especially when I got his point of view, and then went back and watched it and watched some of the other movies. Then all of a sudden I started seeing more and more of this deeper levels of stuff. And I'm sure that'll happen in this case too. But, a lot of my personal research down what you call the rabbit hole, the conspiratorial, I've seen things that really reflect in my mind to some of the concepts and ideas that I got out of this Dune series and Frank Herbert's mind. He had this mind for imagining this whole universe, and not just the universe, many generations of this universe, and then like the politics in the universe, the religion in the universe, the technology in the universe, and the way the people and the communities interact with all these things, and the myths. And there's just so much wrapped in there that is really a reflection of a lot of the things and the difficult concepts that we deal with in the world and on the subject of evil and such. So I think it's a great way to have a deep, difficult discussion, but with something that's kind of fun to talk about, story-based,
Yeah, and I would like to say that, you have to, you can see some of the things that were starting to come out in the time period when Frank Herbert was writing the book, which were the 60s, because the first book came out towards the mid 60s in 65, I think. And if I think a few years later, probably around the 70s, that period, that the whole the whole environmentalist issues were starting to come out, and overpopulation, and this sort of desertification, the dangers of desertification, that and the many doom prophecies were starting to come out in that time period, that the whole will be overpopulated by 2000, and the resources will dry up by 2000, and all this sort of stuff. And you can kind of see some of that, because I know Frank Herbert spoke spoke on some of those issues, and in particular desertification. I don't know if he spoke also on overtly on overpopulation, but anyway, it's a theme that we find in the book, in Dune, for sure. So you have to, it's interesting to note this sort of I guess mind control and obfuscation ideas that we are still talking about today. They just moved the end times date by a few years into the future. It's not 2000 anymore, then it's not 2012 anymore, because
then it was 2020. Now we're on agenda 2030.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's pretty interesting to note. So
that's a really good place to kind of get this thing going, in a way, is to start about some of the main themes that we see that pop up in this. Real quick, before I even go there, I was going to say, just for listeners, what we've looked at is, okay, the series of books. So it goes, you might have to help me with this to get the order right. It goes Dune, and then what was the second one?
Dune
Messiah, and then Children of Dune, and then after that, Heretics. Is that correct?
No. That's the first part of the first three books. That you have God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune.
And then Chapter House. Okay. The last. So there's that book series, and then there was the 1984 film, which I was most familiar with, where Paul has the black hair, and
Kyle I don't know how
I'm
to
not good with the actors' names, but
okay.
We'll just call that one the 1984 version, right? And then we have the TV miniseries, which I've been watching recently, which is about 2000, I believe, when that was released. And then there was another version, which I'm not sure the name of that producer, but then there was also now the newer version that's come out, right?
Yeah, the one from the same director that did Blade Runner 2049. It's Denis Villeneuve.
And that's only so far he's only released the first
part. Yeah, the second part. Yeah,
I
think the second part has to come. Yes, it covers part of the first book, so they have to do another. They are doing another part that should end the events of the first book.
Am I right that there's a whole other version other than the 1984 version? And
no, I think you're referring to the Jodorowsky version that he Alejandro Jodorowsky, who's an Argentinian director. He was supposed to do the Dune movie in the 80s, but then they gave the movie to David Lynch.
Oh, I see.
And that's how it went. But I think they still have the script, or the or something about the movie that sort of it was done pretty differently than what they did with the Lynch movie.
Yeah, it does seem like there was quite a bit of back and forth in Hollywood about who was going to do this movie and how to build up towards it, and then more than once it didn't come together. And it was this huge project that was getting kind of different people wanted to do it and passed around, and who would, and so it's kind of like, in a way, an occulted movie, because there's so much depth to it, and it seems like, anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that, there's a lot of different research you could do on this. You could read the books, you could watch the miniseries, which I found on YouTube, by the way. If you type in on YouTube, Dune miniseries, you can bring those up. Somehow they're letting somebody play it. So
Yeah,
there's the books,
yeah,
and then there's the movies.
yeah,
So we're kind of grab from any of these for our discussion today, and we may even continue this discussion on, create a multi-part series, if we can. I'd like to do that. But like, let's talk about the main themes that we see in these books and in these movies. Frank Herbert, from my point of view, is someone who must have had some deep knowledge of the occult, who must have looked into the mystery schools. I don't know too much about him, as much as I'd like to. Maybe you know more, but I definitely see some big themes that show up in all these books he's written, in all these movies that have been come out about his books. And the main themes I see are, the transhumanist theme, which is like the, man versus nature, that shows up all through this. Eugenics, the breeding programs, and that ties into mind control, which is a major theme that he brings up
yes,
over and over.
yeah,
Technology as a solution, that's kind of like the nature versus, technology, and the transhumanism. And then the secrecy, the occult, things that are occulted, guiding,
yeah,
and then the balance of power in the
yes,
universe. So
and
those are kind of
yeah.
some of the main themes I really keyed into. How about you?
Yeah, I think regarding the mind control, it's interesting because there are both the general, well, societal sort of, society creation, society building, and so there's the societal manipulation going on, and the more direct, physical forms of mind control, like, that we could compare with something like, MK Ultra, and sex programming, and um, mind control obtained uh, through various means. The torture, more like MK Ultra stuff, and then and the sexual manipulation, in order to, that's also part of the breeding program that this secret order, which is manipulating, which is the power, which are the powers behind the scene, and that is the order of the Bene Gesserit. It's sort of this sisterhood that, stay. It has this great power, and it's moving all the pieces on the of the chessboard, behind the curtains.
Right, super secretive, and then they're doing things, generationally, right?
Yes,
And then,
yes,
I think it was in one of the later books, I'm thinking it might have been the Heretics, where, they have the honored matres or something like that, where they're like sort of a spin-off of the Bene Gesserit, and they're
yeah,
actually using, the power of orgasm to control people in a mind control. That's one of their like secret powers, that they
yeah.
can
However,
create this orgasm that no one has been
yeah,
able to do before, and it can just totally, get people to do what you want them to
yeah,
do,
they call
because
it,
you have
yeah, but
this power
yeah,
over, right? Remember
yeah,
that?
yeah, yes, I do, and they are the this uh, they've developed in another part of the universe after humanity, after the scattering happens,
Right, right.
because after God Emperor, which God Emperor, it's Leto the Second. Basically, he transforms himself into a
Man
basically
worm.
an hybrid, and this hybrid sandworm with, superhuman powers, and he rules the universe for thousands of years. Then he dies, or basically he lets himself be killed. I think, be taken out, because he, to try to, uh, if I remember correctly, is try to avoid try to come out of make humanity come out of stagnation.
Right.
And
He has
so
this
there's
the golden path, he calls it, right? Like he sees this way to guide everybody and all of humanity in this better direction, and he has this huge grandiose plan, but he does it all with tyranny, basically,
yeah.
by
So
the strong hand of the worm, right? and
yeah,
and
exactly, and yeah, and during the, yeah, and so after after he's dead, the Bene Gesserit come out of the shadows, and they pretty much become the overt power, which before in the first part of in the first trilogy they were the hidden power, the occulted power, behind the scenes. After God Emperor, so in the Heretics of Dune and in Chapter House Dune, they become the overt power, at least in part of the galaxy. And so the Matres Honorate are are sort of a similar group that they develop in another part of the galaxy, and they use similar techniques. Basically, they are assassins and sex mind manipulators. So
yeah,
and the Bene Gesserit do basically the same thing. We don't know much. It, it is they talk about it in Dune and the first books, but we know more about it in Heretics. We get to know a little bit more of their secrets, of what they really are about. So they do this. They control people. They do this thing called imprinting, which is basically what that other group does. It's basically manipulating men through sex, and and so they still want to, they are obsessed with control. They are control freaks. They are obsessed with the this trying to breed with the breeding, with the interbreeding between the various houses, the various noble houses that is in the first part of the trilogy. So
right. I think that's a pretty important element of this book series and the movies, and the part that to me like keys into reality. I do want to bring it back a little bit to, how does this actually affect us in life, and how are these concepts that we're playing with, that we're noticing reflected in Herbert's writings, actually show reality, things that are true. And I don't always know in these movies how much the producer or the writers specifically make all these points. It seems like Herbert was very knowledgeable, but on the other hand, there's also the synchromysticism thing where sometimes just reality, truth just shows itself in everything. But the part of that, what you're just talking about, is this whole idea that there's this secret guild, right, that are trying to guide humanity, that are secretly doing this eugenics program. So that was the Bene Gesserit, right, in the beginning of the main books in Dune. The Bene Gesserit have this generational project they're working on, which is basically to create this, what do they call it, Hezak, Shatterack, something like that, which is going to be like the perfect human who has this power, this prescience, right?
yeah, the male is gonna become the male Bene Gesserit. So
Well, it was
because
supposed to be the female, though, was their plan.
no, the
Um,
Quitas Haderach, it's a male. So they have this,
oh, I see.
this idea, and then they will, this first male Bene Gesserit will be
Oh, that was
born.
kind of
And
like the legend, right?
yeah, yeah.
But like it was
Also,
like the original, the mother, in the first film, and I can maybe bring up this image, but one of the most exciting things that happens early in the beginning of Dune is, you see Paul, he's Lady Jessica's son, and the Bene Gesserit had this whole plan where they've been breeding between families, and you find out later that the Harkonnens, who are the enemies of Paul's family, the Atreides, are actually, they share the same blood. And you find this out later on, but in the beginning they're
Yeah.
just presented as enemies. And so the head the head Benny Gesserit witch is shows up, and she's like Jessica's um boss, basically. Jessica was like her
Yeah.
servant, slave,
Yeah. Yeah.
apprentice of sorts. And it almost reminds you of Star Wars, with the dark side, where there's this apprentice program going on, where Jessica was supposed to do exactly what the Reverend Mother told her, which was to create this child, what was supposed to be a female.
Yeah.
And she kind of went against her programming and decided that even though she had a boy, she was going to keep it. So I guess part of their powers of these Bennett Jesuit witches is to kind of have this knowledge of whether you're going to have a male or a female,
Well, they
and
control their
influence
yeah.
on it, right?
They control their bodies and their metabolism, and
Right.
so they
So
have these abilities to
they can metabolize poison and these type
yeah,
of
yeah,
things. They have
yeah,
these kind of,
decide if whether they are gonna have a they're gonna have a male or a female child. So also, so
so yeah, the whole idea, they've created this whole eugenics program. They have this highly trained beings that they can um, program their own body and do these type of things. But anyway, she goes against the programming to a certain extent. She's in love with this Duke, and she wants to give him a son. And so, she's kind of in trouble with her boss, right? And so the head witch comes to test Paul and to see, to test his powers, and to see, they had this thing you read more in the book. They don't show it in the movie, but they called it testing to see if you're human. And I
yeah,
thought this was a really interesting concept, because they're sort of separating that most people are kind of more animal like, but they were looking in their breeding program for these special people that have evolved above the animalistic sense and become human, which means that they're willing to make a decision in their mind that transcends the animalistic tendencies. So I'll let you talk a little bit more about that, because that whole session with the Gom Jabbar and all, and
yeah.
maybe I can find the image while you're chatting about it. Let's see if I
Well,
can share
yeah,
my
it's
screen.
this idea that she she comes in and tests Paul with the pointing a poison needle at him while he has his hand into this device that make you think you are basically makes you think that your hand is burning. uh, so and the idea is an animal will immediately retract the hand, and instead we have to see if you're human. So if you resist the if you resist the pain, basically you're human, and they let you live. So
Yeah, this so then she has this thing on his neck, right? That's called the Gom
yeah,
Jabbar, which is a
yeah,
poison needle. And so the choice for him is either he moves and she kills him with this poison, or he stays still and stays calm and lets her burn his hand off, basically what it feels like is happening to him, right?
yeah,
And so he's repeating this litany that he's been taught from his mother, that fear is the mind killer, right? And that's what he's saying over, which I thought that whole aspect of mind over matter is pretty interesting concept they're sharing here, that in order to be one of these trained people, you have to like supersede your tendencies, your natural tendencies to avoid danger, and have this like superhuman ability to withstand pain or withstand fear. And this whole concept of fear ruling people and using that for mind control shows up all in these books and movies. And as you can see, when he passes the test, because he's been specially trained, and he's an exceptional person for a lot of reasons. And that kind of ties back into this whole thing with, and that almost wants me to get back into the subject of the transhumanism movement and the theme in the book, where there's the Butlerian jihad, right, where they tried to rid the whole universe of computers. And there's this quote like that you shared with me, um, or I think it plays the quote right in the beginning of the movie, that says basically, we will not create any machine in the likeness of the human mind. Is that close to
yeah,
how goes,
It's
right?
a it's a commandment it's a commandment that's present on their new Bible. It's that thou shalt not create a machine in the likeness of the human mind. So basically, they they train people to, they find these people that are called mentats, and they use them as computers, basically.
Right. So this is
through probably, I don't know what kind of trauma and messed up
some kind of
kind of
MK
things.
Ultra mind training, right? Like,
Yeah.
so they're it's funny because he's bringing up this problem we have, that it's like the concern we have with AI. Like, we let the computers get too strong, pretty soon we're living in the Terminator movie and they own us, because they figure out we're useless eaters and we're always causing a bunch of problems, right? And
Yeah.
so that
It's
happened
interesting.
like in the history, like Dune, they talk about the Butlerian Jihad already happened like eons
Yeah.
ago, right? Like, and so now they're
But
living in this world that's post ridding the world. There was this giant war across the universe, and they destroyed everything that was like a computer, that and made a rule across the board, no more doing that. And then so all these
yeah,
things are like
which
workarounds. It's creating these
yeah.
mentats and these like Benny Gesserit with these special people that have like computer like abilities, but they're not a computer, you know?
Yeah, and not only that, but they actually kept the technology.
In the Ixians, right?
The Bene Gesserit have computers in their planet, which is Chapter House.
Oh yeah.
So, they keep it for, obviously they've kept it because they are the powers that be.
Right. And then the
And
God Emperor, he always had some special technology that no one else could have. And you find out that the Ixians all along, and
yeah,
Talaxu or whatever you call them, they've
yeah, they
got
have
these
the claw.
special
Yeah,
technologies and computers. So it was never completely gotten rid of, but here was this idea that having computers is a bad thing, which is
yeah,
funny because in our world right now, like, people don't accept that idea readily. Your average person will really argue that no, computers are great, AI is a good thing, we're moving forward, as beings by having these type of technologies. But this movie, I mean, and these books sort of raise the question, like, is it good? Where's the problems with it? When does it go too far? When does technology and humanity start to intermingle to the point where it's become an evil situation? And so to me, that's the interesting discussion point there. Like,
yeah.
where
I
is it
think in
bad? Where is it good?
Yeah, I think in this in this story, it, I think you can see the fact that people who want to keep their power, they don't want technology to be spreading among the common population, and that way they were able to go to sort of establish their feudalistic society where the people are just kept there and they have to they have to kind of hope that they are under a good that they are under like a good master, like like the Atreides, and then not under a bad a bad sadistic evil master like the Harkonnen and others, because they are uh, they are kept basically they are kept in their position of slaves and serfs because all the power resides on people who use these special abilities, supposedly, and they've got all the power. So there's not something like something like the internet to to sort of try to spread knowledge and useful information to
Right.
to the masses.
And that like really ties
So
into
my
our go ahead.
yeah no yeah I was thinking my doubt is this, what I'm thinking about this jihad that they did. Obviously they use the term jihad, which means like a holy war. I think it was and understand, based on my understanding of that whole universe, where at a certain point, it was basically, as far as I understand, it was kind of ruled by religious sort of religious orders and religious fervor even before the Bene Gesserit was founded. So so as far as I understand, it could be kind of a way to it that whole holy war against machines supposedly could have been a way for the people in power to maintain the status quo, and because they probably saw technology as a threat to their power, basically. So
Right. That's a really good
that's
point.
that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking about, because it seems that, again, as far as I've looked into the Dune universe, it isn't a world based in freedom. It's pretty much, and it's way worse than what we have right now. So going into the future, he had this vision of this world ruled by, basically religion, and I mean, completely overtly ruled by this religion and a feudalistic, imperial system, overtly. So
Yeah, and that really does tie into our reality. One of the things that we struggle with when we come to this recognition of how difficult things are, how bad the situation is. My whole podcast is based on the end evil concept, which is kind of like pointing out to people that this problem that we're facing in the world is it's prevalent, and it's been going on for so long that it's going to take a whole sea change in our thinking to really change things in the way that we'd like to see them go. And this book, what Frank Herbert does is he goes through all these detailed kind of explanations of how power does this, how the machinations of evil work, and how
exactly, yeah.
I've done a couple on some episodes I've done in the past, talked about the strategies and tactics of evil, because I feel like one of the things I've gotten back from people over and over the years when I've tried to talk about things of conspiratorial nature or the problem in the world is people say, oh, how could they do that? How could just a few people control so many others? And they have a trouble with the idea that there's a generational thing going on, because that just seems too much. It seems too inconceivable. And they've seen all these silly movies where there's this like one evil guy who's trying to take over the world, and that seems laughable, right? It seems silly.
Yeah.
But when you look at the way Frank Herbert does in these books of describing how the machinations of evil work and how easily people are fooled into believing in religions, one of the things that really stuck with me was, okay, Paul and Jessica, after this major battle happens and Paul's father's killed and they wind up in the desert, and they meet with the Fremen, the desert people. And almost right away, Jessica has an edge on these people because she knows something about their belief system that this is part of their Bene
that was
Gesserit.
implanted there by the missionaries.
Someone else came there in the history of their Bene Gesserit and started spreading this rumor that, oh, someday someone's going to show up and they're going to, they created a legend, they created a myth.
That's
and
the missionaries.
People just fell into that and they started believing it and repeating it. And then no one would think, oh, generations ago, someone showed up on this planet and started this whole idea, so that later on, when one of their people come, that they would have that to use against us, this occulted secret of knowledge that they created a rumor or gossip, basically, to make themselves look like gods when they show up. And,
exactly.
and who would even dream of doing something that manipulative and stinky, to come a generation or two ahead of time and just do this all the time on all kinds of planets, go around planting these ideas so that later you could show up and screw with people's minds because things they don't know.
Yeah. Roman Church, that, anyone?
What would you say?
I was saying Roman Church, anyone?
So. Right. And
that's it.
Like, that is
it's like how they
reality, right?
How they infiltrate cultures and then possibly corrupt their infiltrate and corrupt a certain culture, and that's going to be later utilized to promote their agenda. So I mean, look at Catholicism with many of the not just in the Americas, but many of the European cultures, what they did like before they've exterminated them or incorporated them into the church. So before that, there was missionaries, there was infiltration, and there was I guess, this destabilization of their of that original culture. And we can see that we have clear parallels here in the Dune series with what the Bene Gesserit did with the Missionaria Protectiva, which means basically the protective missionaries, because they were sent there in case in the future the other members of the Bene Gesserit would need would need to implement their plan on a certain planet or on a certain population. So that's what they did with the Fremen, which were kind of the very they were a very strong culture, and nevertheless they were successfully infiltrated by this hidden by this sort of this hidden powers.
Yeah, and that whole idea of religion as a way to control people keeps showing up in these books. That we see it, like you were saying, like Catholicism, and in all different types of religion. Part of the way people are pulled in and wrapped in is by, I don't know, what comes to my mind is the pomp and circumstance, or people dress in these fancy clothes. If you're wearing a robe and you're standing up on this big altar and you're holding some semi-magical object, or something that people revere as being a miracle, it's easy to convince people of all kinds of things because you've already kind of got their mind in this sort of partly imaginary state of believing, right? Of accepting things even without knowing them for sure. And so that kind of, for me, segues into, I have another little clip I want to show from the film. This is from the miniseries where I was getting these particular clips. But like what I like about this one is it sort of shows how, in politics, there's all this high level of people wearing certain costumes. And I noticed here, when they show the Princess Irulan here, which she has the monarch mind control kind of symbology on her hat.
Yeah, she's a Bene Gesserit trained operative. So
again, right? And then like there's this whole...
she's just to let people know who she is. She's the daughter of the emperor. So
right, and that was what I was going to lead into. Like there's this whole pressure then that where she winds up having to marry Paul, even though they don't love each other, but it's like this marriage to create the correct political bond so that the balance of power in the universe, and this has gone on all through history with kings and queens and the politics within these situations. You see, there's all this fakery going on, right? This dinner was, it's almost like he's purposefully showing how people that are in strong disagreement or that have completely different motives are all sitting at the same table and acting as if they have to do this sort of rituals of and the way they dress. It's all a part of this fake system that we all fall for, which is politics and government and people in positions of power, what are based on them having some knowledge or resources that other people don't have, and then they're able to use that to leverage one another into various situations. And we just kind of see all this as very normal and acceptable because that's the way our world is, right? But this movie is really kind of pointing out how there's all this insidious trickery going on and immoral things happening because of these situations. See, Paul gets all pissed off because he knows there's things going on here that aren't right.
That's quite that's a bit different in the book, because in the book there is there isn't the emperor's daughter doesn't go there at that time, and Paul keeps his cool because he's been trained and he knows what the deal is, so he doesn't storm away.
I've noticed that the miniseries, they make him much more impulsive and they kind of play up his personality and character. Just, I don't know whether it was for the sake of drama to draw you in or just to kind of give a different take on his personality. Whereas 1984, Paul was much more like Mentat, like the trained Mentat, where he was calm and collected. And
he's been highly trained since an early age, even though he's like 15 or 16 years old, but he can take out fully grown Fremen warriors due to his training. So
And then I like the part where, like again in the desert, he's having all these trip out moments because of the spice. It affects him. And he has
yes,
this
yeah,
prescient, he has these visions, and he kind of like that's when he realizes, oh shoot, we are Harkonnens. We have the same blood. And he also realizes that, Mom, what have you been doing to me all these years? I'm not a normal person. He realizes that he's basically been trained as a mentat, and he didn't even know that. Like they didn't really tell him, oh, you're in this special training to be virtually a human computer. He had to realize on his own, and then he's kind of like, I'm a freak. What the hell did you guys do
yeah.
to me?
But that's as I've talked with Sean during our episode, I think that's the part where the sort of the moral failing happens because he's kind of he started blaming all these external circumstances that he started using it as an excuse to not make the right choice in the end, because he said, well, this is my destiny, this is what I've been created for, when actually he was fully capable, also thanks to his father, was fully capable of doing making his own choices, especially when he becomes the head of the Fremen resistance there on Dune. So what I was saying with Sean during our episode was that instead of doing the right thing, which was the liberating the planet from the Harkonnen and the Emperor, which probably would have led to the fall of the Empire and all the other houses being freer from that threat, because the Emperor holds this sword over all the other planets that there are there in the universe. So we were saying that instead of he could have destroyed the the Empire and liberated Dune. Actually, instead he just goes there and takes the throne himself, which will lead to unimaginable war. It will lead to a great bloodshed across a second jihad,
another jihad, basically,
across
right?
the universe, which will be way worse way worse than the conditions people were living up to that point. And he does that because he thinks it's just his destiny and he can't escape it when
Right.
he actually has the choice. So that was some of the things we were talking about. So I thought,
Yeah, that really sunk in for me, the point you made, Francesco, on that, where none of the characters in Dune's in Frank Herbert's book are really heroes. Like
yes,
you get drawn in the movie where you kind of want to be like rooting for Paul
because
and the Duke, because it draws you in. They especially because they seem noble, and the Duke seems
yes,
like this.
yeah,
One of the other scenes I was thinking of showing was where he saves the men who are collecting the spice, and we'll get into that next. That's the last thing I want to try to
yeah,
cover in just a couple of minutes here, is the worm and the spice. But the point being that Duke Leto was really kind of like, you look up to this guy. He seems like a really fair-minded guy, and he treats his people well. And then in juxtaposition, you see the Harkonnens, who are like abusing, killing their own people, raping people, just doing whatever they need to do. And so you really want to look up to the Atreides family, but you realize as you read this book, and then you get in another one, that they're just as corrupt. And that every time Frank Herbert shows this thing, kind of like in the Lord of the Rings, that power always corrupts. Whoever
yeah,
gets the ring of power loses their freaking mind and does a bunch of terrible shit. And it was like Paul saw this coming. When he was exposed to the spice, he would have this prescience,
yes,
these dreams of seeing the future. And he's always fighting with himself about this because he doesn't want to do terrible things. He doesn't want to see terrible. He's trying to find the best path forward, but he's always being led into making these choices that are going to kill lots of people.
Yeah.
And yet he still lets himself do these things and fall into it. It's almost like he can't get out of it. And in a way, that describes the situation we have. Like, as long as we have these ring of power, these positions in our world of politics and leaders, and we accept the idea that one person can have power over another, it just opens the door for more of this terrible crap to keep happening. And as long as people keep believing in these religions and letting themselves be sort of mystified and fooled by these legends, they're going to keep being wrapped up into these jihads and these killing
Yeah.
frenzies. And there's no end to it until we transcend beyond that. And the Dune book just shows how it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
goes and goes and
And
goes, right?
also, yeah, and also that evil is a choice. You know, it's a choice. It's not our. It's not our. It's not our destiny. It's not written that humanity has to keep doing this to live. Has to keep living this way. Ultimately, evil is a choice. That's what I took out of that. And also, I think the Atreides represents potential for good, especially with Leto, with Paul's father. That in the book he mentions how he hates, basically how he hates the system, and he wishes that there was no more class. No more of this feudalistic class system. He wishes that he could abolish it. And he has noble. He
Ideals.
has no noble ideals, and obviously he has to live in that. He's born in the system, and he has to live in it. But he sort of surrounds himself with the kind of the best people. Especially the Garni Hadlek and Duncan Idaho, especially. Duncan Idaho it's a very important character in throughout all the series.
Right.
After, yeah, I personally, I don't want to get maybe too ahead in the conversation, but personally, I think he is the truly moral person of the whole series.
Right. He does sort of become the hero in many ways, and he at certain points asserts his independence from the rule of others. Although most of the books, and like, he and Gurney were like basically slaves to their owner, which was the Duke. And even in their what seemed like a good relationship, they still were completely in servitude, and they saw their life as being a servant. And even Duncan multiple times was like basically willing to die in service.
Oh yeah.
Because
that's in the first
ideal,
book. But then
right? His highest ideal was to serve his master, which is sad.
Yeah, because they've been, as far as they've seen it, they've been liberated by Leto from slavery.
Right. But isn't that like the same trick we're in, where people think they're free, but they're really not? They're still buying into this idea of politics and voting.
Yeah, of course.
Being owned by others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, for sure. They have this. There is definitely this aspect, this servilism aspect, but as I was saying, I think that Leto Atreides represents the potential for good to happen, which is which ultimately fails because of the choices of his son Paul. So
right.
When he takes the throne and he becomes the blood and he becomes a butcher. Basically, he fills the universe with blood because he thinks he needs to stay. Has this twisted thing that he needs to follow his his vision, and he thinks that he has no choice when in fact he does, like anybody else. As we said,
to me, that theme there is fate. A lot of people, when I've discussed philosophy with people, I recognize one of the, I think, a thinking error personally is when people start to grab onto or believe in the idea of fate. And that's kind of what religions often do. They say, oh, if you do this specific thing in life, here's what's going to happen in the afterlife, or here's what's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or, if you make
it's
these
unavoidable
choices,
that, that's
that you're
something.
just going to
Yeah.
wind up in this. There's nothing you can do, and that puts people in a state of mind that's very animalistic, that where you're easily convinced that things are going to be a certain way, and you don't have a choice, and you just have to do what you're told because it's all going to happen anyway. And whenever somebody falls into that type of thinking, they're easily manipulated, or they make choices that are immoral because they're not looking at it from the divine self, touching into your connection to reality and God, but trusting on some other
Your free
authority.
will and
Right,
sovereignty,
right.
an ability to make your own choices. And
Absolutely.
also I want to say another important thing, that's the whole chaos aspect, that the fear of chaos. It's one of the main, I think it's one of the main themes of the story, because you have the Bene Gesserit with their whole, they are control freaks, and they
Right.
are always afraid to lose their power, and that will cause this immense chaos, and God knows what's
Well, right, like the
what's gonna
guild,
happen.
everything hinges on the spice. The spice must flow, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
there's always this fear of, well, if you stop the flow of the spice, we're not going to be able to travel. We're
yeah,
not, that would
yeah,
stop everything in the universe. And so that's the big risk. And then eventually Paul holds that over their heads at the end when he takes over power, and he says, look, I'm going to put all the spice, right over this body of
I'm gonna destroy it
water. I
if you
could
don't.
destroy it
Yeah.
basically, and just tell my guys, and they're just going to destroy all of it. And then that gets the guild and the emperor and everybody's like, no, you can't destroy the spice. That's what we all live on. That's like in our world, that's like the currency, the money, the drug trade, the slave trade of human trafficking. These are
Mm.
the symbols of the modern versions of spice in our world, are the things that these evil people are trading and using to keep us in the state of slavery. Gas and oil is another good example of
Yeah,
what
yeah.
could be. I'm going to show real quick here for the last few bits. I think it would be really good just to talk about the spice itself and the worm, the symbol of the worm
Mm.
and the spice. I'll let you talk, and I'll just share some images I found of people's depictions of worms, because I think they're kind of
Okay.
fun.
Yeah,
But
that's yeah, those are cool.
yeah, tell me what you think about the worm and the spice and the symbols of those things.
Yeah, well, the spice, many people have compared it to, as we said, to the, many people have compared it to oil, or similar. That's the resource that everyone needs, that the whole world seems to revolve around. So I guess, and the thing that we used to, it's something that causes all these wars and conflict all over the world. So that's probably the main allegory for it, in the movie. It's a big struggle for resource control. So yeah, that this image is from the more recent movie.
Oh, that one, yeah, with the big worm. So like,
uh no, not this one, but the other one with the,
oh, this one
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And
So
uh
I was doing some thinking this morning about the symbology of the worm,
mm,
and I even kind of like went on a couple websites and I looked up, what does a worm symbolize, right? And what I found is that the worm actually symbolizes death and rebirth in a lot of ways.
mm,
The
mm,
shape of it, has a correspondence to like the intestines or the sexual organs, and these things are like the beginning and the ends of life, right? And then there's this aspect of the worm where it's hidden underground, right? And it has these inner workings that we don't know what's going on. Underground is this, it's super important to life, and there's all this stuff going on down there, but it's hidden beneath the layers, right? It's integral to our reality, but it's kind of like not something we're completely aware and knowledgeable of. So it's talking about the mysteries of life and the mysteries of life and death,
mm.
right?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that strike you with the symbol of the worm and the reason why you think maybe Frank used the worm, or what does that
Yeah,
how does that hit
yeah,
you?
I haven't looked that much into it, into that aspect.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, how about the spice aspect of it?
but yeah, so I mean, he connect. I know he connects the two. So the worm is connected with the production of the spice.
Right, right.
Now I don't remember. There's a whole process he described. Because I think before the sandworm, there's the sandtrout,
Mm-hmm.
which is this other
And then there's
organism.
this pre-spice, right?
Yeah, is it that the organism that produces the spice? I don't remember now exactly how that works, but they are anyway. The sandworm is it's important to the whole production of the spice. So
And then there's the
uh,
interplay with water too. Like the worms
yeah,
can't
yes,
touch the
there's
water, the
water.
spice can't touch the water, otherwise they, there's like some bad chemical reaction that happens and creates an explosion, or they all.
Yeah, on a massive scale, it's dangerous for them to come in contact with, if I remember it correctly. Yeah, and then there's a whole production of underground water also that they are keeping in order uh, to basically make the planet green again in the future.
Yeah,
So
that's a
the
whole
Fremen,
nother thing, the
yeah, the Fremen
geoengineering.
are working toward it, even though they still they want to leave a portion of the planet desertical for the worm to live. However, yeah, their project is to make the planet more uh, hospitable towards life, so they don't have to always live on the to always live on a survival mode, and as we know, that doesn't promote growth and evolution. So that was interesting. That was an interesting part there. So
Yeah, like water was so precious, and the water like symbolizes life, right? The
yeah,
desert's like
yeah.
this arid, you know no one can live in the desert. The only way you manage to live in the desert is by having these special suits that maintain your water, and you have
Yes,
to
and you're
be
always
constantly
and you're always
vigilant,
in
right?
a and you're always in a fight or flight sort of state. You are always in a reptilian brain modality. So
What's
they
weird is
know
that
that.
then the whole universe sort of relies on this planet being inhospitable, and these worms creating this resource that they can use to continue their sort of tyrannical system of hierarchy. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
based on,
yeah,
this condition has to be. And when they start changing that condition on the planet in the later books, you see how it starts changing the balance of power, and whoever controls the spice controls the universe. Very interesting, and it kind of displays in a real way how that evil power can corrupt, and how that people can be manipulated through owning resources and creating belief systems around those resources.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so much there. We're getting close to the end of our hour here today, and
Oh
I
yeah,
kind of
that
do
is.
like to
Yeah,
keep it close to an hour for my own attention span and for watchers' attention span. But my thought is that we've already touched on some of the themes and a few of the characters. If you'd like to keep going with this and do a second part, that'd be great, and we could get into more detail on the themes and the characters, and because there's so much more to discuss. We just got into geoengineering and the planetologist and the
yeah,
Fremen. There's so
yeah.
much more to
Geoengineering
go.
is another thing that
Yeah.
happens in the planets. That they have the weather modification satellites.
Right. And
So
their whole plan with the planetologist was to change the planet, to terraform, basically, similar to aliens, right?
yeah, yeah, that's right. That was the I guess the secret plan of the imperial planetologist.
Right, right.
That he
Heinz.
he acted, as they say, he went native. So he pretty much became a Fremen and started to work be, to work towards make it a more uh, more life sustaining planet. So in order for the life conditions to be better and not so harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, that again raises moral questions. When is it right? To what extent is it okay to use technology to create more comfort for ourselves? And when does it create a problem? Or, how is it tied into the balance of power and resources? There's so much there to consider and compare to the world we live in and how things are done and how that's affecting us and our ability to um, live without suffering, and what is the outcome of making those type of choices. So there's a lot to think about there. So I'll let linker the thinkers and listeners consider these things on their own, and hopefully you guys want to share with us your thoughts and comments. You can contact me through email, or what I'll do is play this episode on I'll stream it, and then if people want to come on and comment, then maybe that'll give us more ideas for continued conversation on this. But what are your closing thoughts, Francesco, in terms of this discussion we had today and takeaways?
Well, yeah, as we said, there's really a lot to talk about. So, yeah, I think we cover quite a bit, and yeah, hopefully we'll. I guess we could do another conversation. I think for sure, because there's many other things, and then even going on, we could expand on some other stuff, even going beyond the things that happen beyond the first the first episode, the first book. So yeah, that's really quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah, he really bit off a lot with this book and the storyline. Right, Herbert, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he you know he put he put in these books, he put a lot of things. Again, for me, I guess what stood out, the things that stood out for me the most, as I said, was like the whole how to how the few control the masses, and the the various forms of manipulation, and the fear, the fear of chaos, the willingness to control, lust for power and control, and yeah, and I guess we could get into some more on another episode.
Yeah, those are great themes, and I really appreciate all your thoughts on this. And the things you and Sean talked about got me thinking more about it. And to me, really, the takeaway is more than anything is that the power of stories gives us an ability to look at our real world and our own experience and interpret them in different ways. And it's really hard to have some of these discussions about the problems in the world that we want to change, or the problems in ourselves that we want to change. But when we look at them through the lens of these stories, it gives us a way to digest these ideas, like the worm, to let them come through us and think about them in different ways and talk about them openly without feeling like, super attached to one idea, because this is just a story, right? And I think that's really valuable. And to me, stories can be used to manipulate people, as we described with the Bene Gesserit, manipulating a whole race of people with their made up stories, and then kind of
and
using them.
Frank, and the intentions of Herbert himself.
Maybe,
who knows?
right?
Who knows? Because as we said in the beginning, the various things he inserted in the story, like the danger of overpopulation, and of the scarcity of resources, and all that stuff. I don't know what his intentions were. I don't know if he was genuinely worried about those things, or or was it something
Or
else
was
going
he
on there?
right
So
trying to psychologically affect the people that
yeah,
would
yeah.
see
Who know?
this
I don't
and
know.
read this? You
Honestly, I
know,
don't know. So,
it's hard to
but it's a
say. And
yeah,
did he think that all out, or is it just like I said, synchromysticism? Or it's hard to say, but you sure can see these themes, and you sure can think about them, and we can help people with this process of using these stories to help us all transcend some of this BS that we're living through, and kind of see the storylines behind what's going on, or consider other options of maybe an explanation for how things wound up the way they are in our reality. And I think that's really the way I take value from this type of story, and talking about this type of story. So thanks for your help with
yeah.
that.
Oh, no problem.
Cool. Right on, man. Well, I'll look forward to continuing this conversation and thinking some more about this. I've been enjoying chipping away at watching more of the series. And like I said, I got to crack open Chapter House, and that's an exciting project for me too. So I would encourage listeners, if you haven't, check out Frank Herbert, check out the Dune series, look at the movies, and give some thought to what realities is this reflecting about our actual existence, and what we might have to do to change our thinking and to change the future for humanity, and not keep falling in these same traps.
Yeah, I
All
agree.
right, Francesco, your work, people can check you out. I know you have material on the One Great Work
Yeah, I
Network.com.
do.
And
And
are you on Odyssey and YouTube?
yes, I am on Odyssey and YouTube. Yeah, just uh, I guess you can go to maybe to my One Great Work Network page and see all the links that
That's
I have
really
on
the
there
best
for
place to
my
get all the
website
links.
and all the other platforms.
Right on. I'll go on there and capture those links. And when we play this episode, when I stream it, I will share all those links along with this. And when I publish
Yeah,
it,
you can. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. I guess send people to my One Great Work Network page, so they'll see they'll see all the links
excellent.
there. So
Yeah, and then if people want, they could go back and see your interview with Sean to get a little more background and knowledge on the story.
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was an interesting episode.
yeah. It was good. So yeah, thanks so much for the work you do. I appreciate it, and I find it inspiring, and it helps urge me on in what I'm doing too. So we'll
Oh,
be in
thank you.
touch, and
Yeah,
much respect.
appreciate you having me on here. Great conversation.
All right, my
Looking
man.
forward for the next one. So.
Excellent. Hello, this is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast.
It was a crazy year, 2020. I think everybody kind of was losing their mind one way or another. But if you're listening to this, you made it through.
And they're making mistakes, and people are starting to awake.
There is a science of human freedom.
It's also a spiritual journey.
A person under hypnosis will start to see that there's something wrong. Something is wrong.
It's great that you know what you've come to know, but until there's an outlet for that information and you start creating and putting your creations out into the world to teach other people so that they can become as knowledgeable as you.
Life. What is encouraging life is good. That which takes away from life and growth and creativity is not good.